Well,
next
you have a
time.
lot of friends then.
Yeah, we got a lot of people.
Hope you can find a good chair.
Yeah, right. Should call in for reservations.
Alright. Missy, what's the public hearing, is it?
We got two of them.
Telecommunication towers and.
Just so you know, I started the YouTube stream now. Just FYI.
Oh, both of those that we talked about already, got it,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
All those fun ones.
Yeah.
Everything's good now.
It's good. It's good. No, we went to Padre.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Nice.
It's just like spring break all over.
Well, you probably didn't do everything that you did.
No, it wasn't quite the same.
It was better.
For the record, it wasn't quite the same.
Yeah. A little different.
Like
We won't go there.
slight.
I won't go where.
What
Because,
Padre
it's
was
the
like
second
when
year
it was on
we've done
spring
it,
break.
and for whatever reason, that week in Padre is just suspect weather-wise.
Yeah.
It was chilly, but it wasn't rainy.
Yeah.
We had a couple of nice days. It was high as in the sixties, low seventies, and no sun, so.
Oh, no, sir.
Yeah, there should.
What do you want?
Guess
in for state project?
That's the level.
Extra credit, hopefully?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not, no, not summer.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, this will be a quick one.
This week.
Oh, don't jinx it, man.
This will be a quick one.
That's, you can't say it again as you're talking.
Now you double jinxed it.
I quit saying it every time I think it's gonna be a quick meeting.
Four minutes, not
That's still not too bad.
Yeah.
but it was like all the restaurants were open. Seafood every day.
Oh, really?
$15. We used to love that place. It's like-
He would get fish in the smallest fishes.
So is that a resort or is that?
No, it's a condo.
Down in the wings.
They got three tennis courts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice guy.
Yes.
And some of the time, most of the time, it was legitimate questions.
Oh, yeah.
He asked the same
Yeah,
question.
I like this.
He's-
That's amazingly delicious.
Yeah. So there's no change, it's all local.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that's awesome.
How's it going?
Good, who are you?
I couldn't remember what he was doing.
Runner you,
Good point.
congratulations.
Made it.
That's awesome.
I like back in the meeting notes to see.
Good, man.
Yeah, but it-
Oh, you're being accomplishment.
Did you make it?
Yes.
Made it?
What month, I'm not sure, but I got it in
First, second?
2017, 18, I get it.
Let's see, I was better than 60%.
That's okay.
That's good.
He had all this stuff there.
Sounds good.
I get into it.
12 hours and
I
30 minutes.
was just serious.
12 hours.
Somebody asked me how long.
That's a long
It was the same
time.
year that I got on the cemetery.
Yeah.
There's a
Second.
second.
When was the first?
Oh, it's not affiliated
Good,
with the city.
15 hours
Oh.
and 3 minutes.
Everybody thinks it's in the Soda Cities, and the Soda Cities.
Better.
We think it's
Better.
it's totally separate entity.
Yeah. It was, so I had to deal with men. Where the first one was all up in Pakistan. I don't think it was.
Nobody up there flying.
Because at least you go a little bit deeper. I swore it off forever again when I was on the flight. That's what I meant to do. I'm feeling better about it now. So. The bike, or the road is like, the road is like.
Well, we're proud of you. Congratulations. That's
Do you-
awesome.
Do you know Phil Thompson? That, he's my neighbor, he did Iron Man too. He does both of them, he's done two.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is nice.
On purpose.
Yeah, which I think is odd.
My father-in-law's last Ironman was Tahoe. Did you ever think about doing that?
I did, you know, so, yeah.
Because it's just brutal.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They've eliminated a lot of the long distance ones.
Well, the weather was just, and the weather up there is so
I
suspect.
had the urge to put
The
my
weather turned on and it was like snow at the top,
Oh,
wind at the bottom, it was just
I
miserable.
thought about doing it one time, but I don't even like to exercise, so I think that's not probably what to do.
Okay.
that was good. So I'll give it a little time and see what I decide.
That's awesome.
As I tell the doctor, he said, you need to
This conference will now be recorded.
Amazing how that hushes the crowd. Just. All right.
Gee, it got awfully quiet.
Yes, it did, didn't it?
Pulled the trigger with 2 minutes to spare, so. My watch says 6 o'clock. I think it's time to call this meeting to order. Roll call.
Manson,
Present.
Templin,
Here?
Lane,
Here.
Huggins, Melbourne,
Here.
Maddock,
Here.
Schultz.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, it looks like Commissioner Huggins is not present.
Thank you. Item 3A, approving the planning commission agenda. Note that one of the agenda items, the applicant has requested be tabled. Any other changes or additions you'd like to make to the agenda?
Make a motion, we approve the planning commission agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Planning commission agenda has been approved. Item 3B, approving the minutes of the planning commission held on October 24th, 2023. Anyone see any changes, additions, or corrections that are necessary or appropriate?
I just want to make note I was not present, so we'll be approving that.
We're going to watch to make sure you don't vote.
Got it. Let's clarify.
I make a motion it's approved as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded for, did you get that? We good? Okay. Moved and seconded for approval of the planning commission meeting minutes from October 24th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Item 3C, disclosure of conflicts of interest. I'll start on this. I have a conflict of interest on 7A, but the applicant has requested to be tabled. So when that does come up, we need to recuse myself.
Same. 7A.
Same, 7A.
So we have 3 who have conflicts. That's probably the extent of it, I'm guessing. So you end up with 4. You gotta get Mark to come up for that. Okay. Anything else? Item 3D, disclosure of outside communications regarding commission business. Anyone been approached?
Nope.
Okay, seeing none. Item 3E is a motion to change the date of the December meeting to the 19th. Our original date was the 26th, is that right, Brad?
That's correct.
So to officially change that, we'll need a motion and to vote on approving the change to December 19th.
Make a motion, we approve the December meeting change to December 19th at 6 p.m.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Okay. We'll have that meeting date on the 19th of December. At this time, item 4 is call to the public. Members of the public who wish to address the planning commission regarding items not on the agenda may do so at this time. Any presentation is for informational purposes only. No action will be taken. There's a 4-minute time limit. Do we have anyone who'd like to address the planning commission tonight? This is your chance. Anyone online?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Then I will close the call to the public, which takes us to item 5. Public hearing, 5A, to consider changes to the city code regarding telecommunication towers. Brad?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a public hearing. Request for amending the city code for telecommunications towers. We did have a discussion on this at the last meeting, and the recommendation from the planning commission was to allow for telecommunication towers in the RA, RO, and R1 district with a special use permit only, and also was to strike the language in the code that allows the city council to, I guess, bypass the special use permit process if there was a approved lease on city-owned property. So across the board, everybody will have to complete a special use permit no matter who owns the property or what are the conditions. I do think that in some ways there should be, I don't know, I'm still struggling a little bit with the issue with the city council because ultimately it still goes back to them regardless. And it does seem like it does help streamline the approach if it's on city-owned property. But anyway, we will carry forward your recommendation on this item. I did also add the RA district because, as Mr. Chairman pointed out, we do have a tower on Daryl Zimmerman's property, which is zoned RA, rural agriculture. So I included the RO, R1, and RA just as a point of order. So if those are our largest tracts within DeSoto and probably the ones that be most likely to have a telecommunications tower proposed on them. So the smaller districts, the R1A, 2A, and R3 and RH are excluded from a telecommunications tower. So with that, I will stand for any questions that you may have.
Any questions for staff?
My only, this might be semantics, but if we're changing this, does Zimmerman, does he need to apply for a special use permit, or does that grandfather in, or how does that work?
He's got one right now, so when
Yeah,
it
that's
comes up for
Okay.
renewal.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have not looked at the actual ordinance when it was passed, but when it does come up, they'll need to go through a special use permit process.
Any other questions? Thank you, Brad. The matter is open for public hearing. If anyone would like to be heard on this matter, please address the podium, give us your name and address, and keep your comments limited to 2 minutes.
That's Patrick online, Mr. Chairman.
I saw that.
Okay.
Patrick, do you have any questions? He's a member of the public.
I do not.
Okay. Seeing how there doesn't seem to be many people clamoring to give public comment on this, I'll close the public hearing and the matters before the planning commission.
I think it kind of addresses what my concerns were last meeting, and I think I'd be in support and recommending the modification to the code.
Yeah, I would agree.
If there's no further discussion, entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve item 5A for text amendment to zoning requirements for telecommunication towers requiring special use permit for RA, R0, and R1.
So recommending approval to city council.
Yes, thank you.
Second. Any further discussion?
I was thinking you might want to add the removal of that
The
sentence, I guess.
line 4 that is crossed out.
Oh, I thought that was part of the proposal.
It is, but you just mentioned adding the special use permit to the RA, RO. and
Inclusive
RO.
of removal of line 4 in the permitted uses text.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second?
I would make one comment before we vote on this, because I think the council deserves some explanation of why. The idea, as I remember with the discussion, was that if you're gonna do it by special use permit, there's really no special reason to do it differently for the city than it is for any other owner.
That's pretty much what.
That's correct.
Okay. If that's when you're
Yes.
working with you guys, I just want the record to reflect that.
That's
Yep.
exactly right.
You got me?
Mhm.
Okay.
I don't want any special condition with the city owning property that somebody could get something approved without public discussion.
There's no reason.
Fair.
Yes.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Call for a vote.
Manson,
Yes.
Templin,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Milburn,
Yes.
Maddock,
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Moving next to a public hearing item to consider changes in the city code trailer, boat, and RV parking requirements. Brad?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is also a item that has been before us on adjusting the city code. As talked about the last meeting, the code was not clear on where you could park a RV, boat, or a trailer on. And basically, it says that it must be on an approved surface, which is concrete or asphalt. And it's been practice in DeSoto for years and years to allow compacted gravel on the side or rear yard as long as it met the setbacks. And that's kind of what we've been telling people for years and years. And upon a little bit more closer examination, the code doesn't exactly say that. So we felt like had to go through the process, bring it to the planning commission, and came up with language for recreational services that would allow parking in the side or rear yard of a private residence. The recommendation from the planning commission was basically in agreement with that, but wanted to protect structures that were newer in the city, and then also require that must be on asphalt or a concrete surface and not allowing the compacted gravel. We did add, it was discussed, but I think it's when I talked to Cameron, who's in charge of codes enforcement, he liked the idea, and I agree with the half-acre size, because it also, we do have a lot of large lots in DeSoto that, and there's still some vacant ones that somebody could build a house on, and the house could be 200 feet from the road, and we'd be requiring a paved surface. So I felt like anything less than a half acre, you have to have it paved. But if there's some large lots that don't have a concrete or asphalt surface, it kind of penalizes them because it's just such an insignificant idea that they could be that far away and somehow cause some stress or angst by a nearby resident. So we did add that provision of the half acre. The other thing that I kind of grappled with was the January 1st, 2024 date. It's something that, a lot of times when regulations go into place, you do let people have a little bit of time, because when this happens, if it's January 1, they've got basically, a month if they want to put in a gravel surface. So you might want to consider sending that or moving that date back into 2024, but certainly it's your recommendation to the city council. So we do have the provision in red that was brought to you at the previous meeting, and then the additional item in blue shows the additional recommendation that was discussed at the meeting on October 24th. So with that, I'll stand with any questions you may have.
Hey, Brad, would it clarify a little better if you said if a permit was pulled by January 1?
I guess it would help a little if we could add that, but it's really the construction of the principal structure defines the date of.
Okay.
So basically, anybody who's before that still gets that opportunity, but anybody after the principal structure is built after the 1st of 2024 is confined to asphalt or concrete.
I just think if you could say maybe a permit pulled by January 1, so anybody that's actually under construction today wouldn't have to rush to get it done.
So maybe make it March, into March 31, or something like that, into the quarter.
They start certain construction season.
And this would give, because, Cameron's also and his staff are the building inspectors, so they would And he does work with people, say, hey, listen, if you want this done, you need to, you need to take care of it. So he'll pass that information along to the home builders and will then contact the homeowners or the future residents.
But if this is Patrick, if I can just interject for a moment, I mean, making, in my view, this happens a lot, as Roger can probably attest to, where, we're not, the purpose of this is not to give people time to, do gravel. We're trying to put the date so it coincides with the passage of this law. So there's you're on either side of that. And I just don't know if it's such a good idea to give, like 3 months for, I don't think it'll happen, but it could encourage, people to pull building permits. It just, I never viewed this as, we need to give people time to, see if they can fit under the deadline to have gravel instead of, so I just throw that out there.
Well, it's certainly a valid point, we can,
But what it mitigates against is somebody who's in the middle of construction right now, they're not gonna be done until February, and they didn't know about this. That's I suppose the thing is, how much time do you need to be in that situation? How many people are we talking about? So it's probably not many.
Yeah, how many
No.
permits are open? Might not be that
for
big a
single
deal.
family resident, not many.
Probably
Okay.
So, I just want to clarify something if we can. So, the summary, long-standing practice of RV camper boat stored on the side yard of a hard surface. So, that part to me indicates that we're sort of cleaning up some verbiage on the actual regulations here. Pertinent to storage of a vehicle or RV, whatever, on the side of a house. So I don't understand. I guess I'm a little bit confused as to why lot size has a lot to do with it if it's a side yard storage versus, because yes, you're going to have a longer driveway into your structure, but if we're talking about side yard storage, I guess that's what I thought we were addressing. Is where I'm a little bit.
Yeah, well, I guess the issue really is with the half acre is because there are large lot subdivisions that, like I said, might be 100, 200 feet from the road and don't feel like it's necessary to hold them to
But
a
are we
standard.
addressing the entire from the city street until the park? I thought we were just looking at the parking space itself. I guess that's where I'm confused.
This regulates what you can park that trailer on,
Right.
not how you get it there.
Right. Correct. Okay. That's why I was
Yeah.
getting at. Yeah.
Basically,
Okay.
Moore said gravel wasn't allowed.
Yep.
I do think, though, maybe one thing that might make this a little easier to understand is that the alternate hard surface is only available on lots of more than a half an acre that's been built prior to whatever date we're talking about. If that's the case, then I think I would remove the last sentence and then just put as prefatory language before the red language on lots of more than a half acre on which the principal construction was completed on or before January 1, 2024, because that's what gets you into the alternative. It's only gonna be permitted in the alternative, and the alternative requires a minimum of a half an acre.
Correct.
So I would suggest that might make it a little easier to understand. Because the alternative is only gonna be available if it's a half an acre or more and they built it prior to this January.
Yes.
I agree.
Okay, any other questions for Brad?
I know we discussed, not allowing to have trailers parked to your home, next to your home. Is that something we just totally decided we weren't gonna do? They were still gonna be allowed? If that was a hard surface?
Yeah, I mean, the trailer is, it's either a boat, it's an RV, it's just a pull-behind trailer.
Right,
So
so,
didn't really, in most communities, don't really distinguish between whether it's just a trailer or,
right, any type of
Or a
parked
boat
vehicle
trailer.
next to your yard. I was thinking we had kind of talked about that as well. Because it was not allowing new developments to have trailers in the side and rear yards. So I would, mobile homes and
Yeah, well, mobile homes are in a different category, I guess. And a lot of the, I guess, like Arbor Ridge and those type of communities have homeowners associations that have way more strict regulations than what the city code has.
Okay. So everybody's comfortable just letting the
Well, it's-
HOA handle it,
It's
or?
consistent with what we've had in the past. So our code has always permitted you to do that if you had a hard surface.
Okay.
So if we're talking about making a wholesale change where we're not gonna permit it at all in the future, that would be a pretty significant change from what we've had in the past. But if you wanna go there, we can talk about it.
I just don't like the idea of having them parked right next to a new home. I don't like them next to an old home myself, but, I just think that's something, and I know we talked about having them grandfathered in last time, but I thought we were talking about more than just the surface being eliminated or added to, whichever you want to say. What are you guys' thoughts about that?
Well, yeah, this item's just on the surface. It's not really saying no to a trailer on something that was built after January 1.
That's what I was hoping we were addressing as well.
I mean, historically, I would say the last time we did something with this, it was abundantly clear that there are a lot of folks in this town who live here because they can do that. And having the place to put my boat or trailer at the side of the house or in my backyard is important to them. So I would think if you wanted to make that sort of a fundamental change to say, we're not gonna permit it anywhere,
That's where we said they would be grandfathered in,
okay? So you're saying for any new development, we just won't permit it, period?
period, yes. That's my thoughts.
Well, I don't think I'd support that.
Yeah, I don't know if I would either. So, I mean, it's especially on like Arbor Ridge, for example, those side yard setbacks are so tight. I mean, they're 10, 12-foot setbacks. So, I mean, honestly, it'd be difficult to get a boat or a camper in there anyhow with those type of lots. I mean, they're not half-acre lots. I mean, they're below quarter-acre lots. So, I mean, that would be a little difficult to do that anyhow on the side yard.
Yeah,
And the homeowners association is pretty much eliminate a lot of it.
allow that.
Mm-hmm.
If you have,
If you have one,
If you
yeah.
have each other.
which most of them do today.
Yeah.
All right.
I didn't think there was much built anymore that didn't have one.
Well, Oak Country is a good example.
Yeah.
That-
I've heard that.
So
I,
this is Patrick again, and I apologize. I don't have the camera on, so I can't see who's talking. But just a couple things. I just wonder on the half acre. I guess just because it's a half acre doesn't mean the house will be way off the road. So I just wonder, is it really appropriate to measure it that way? That, if you're on a half acre lot, then, or more, then you still get to maintain the gravel surface. I mean, that assumes that every half acre lot, the house would be way off the road, I think was kind of the assumption there. And I just wonder if that's a good assumption. And then secondly, I was just going to throw out, probably 10 years ago, Linda, we as a city, under direction by the council, decided to, instead of just doing complaint-based complaints, we sent out letters to anybody who had a trailer that was not in their side yard. And, not that it should direct policy, but we had council chambers full for numerous meetings where just the letter to residents, saying we have this regulation, please be in compliance. I mean, it was almost unmanageable. So yes, I can't just outright prohibiting trailers and RVs. I think it would really be a tough one to, even if we got it on the books, to enforce.
okay, well,
But that's it.
we don't want to rock the water too much.
To address the distinction for a half acre or less than a half acre, I mean, I think the idea was that if you're gonna use the alternative surface. There's nothing that says you can't do it on a lot of less than half an acre as long as you've done the hard surface, right? So the exception for the alternate was if you were theoretically a quote larger lot. The half acre is admittedly random, but I don't think it was necessarily designed to mean that it was far from the road. It was to distinguish that from new development that's much more intense. And those intense developments, that the hard surface seems to be a more important requirement. So I don't have a real problem with the notion of the half acre. I don't think the idea was that it's big enough you're gonna be able to stick it someplace away from the road. It was that you're distinguishing between intense development and less intense development. And I don't know if acres is right. Maybe the city council will say it's gotta be an acre or more. I don't have any real feel for what the random cutoff ought to be, but it is admittedly random.
Yes, I mean, a typical lot is a quarter acre. So it is a bigger lot, but it's not,
It's not huge.
it's not huge.
No.
So I guess what's the alternative? They just have to park the camper in the driveway.
Right. Any other questions for Brad, or can I open this up to the public? Thank you, Brad. This is a matter that it's a public hearing item. If there's anyone from the public who would like to be heard on this matter, please approach the podium, give us your address, and limit your comments to 2 minutes or less. Anyone? No one online other than Patrick? I'll close the public hearing at that. So the matter is before the commission.
Just for clarification purposes, are we keeping it January the 1st?
It's a good thing to start with. Do we feel like January 1's fine, or do we feel like we need to heat it back some in case there have to be people that have building permits that are planning on doing it?
So, make sure I'm clarifying here. So, we're saying that for lots greater than a half an acre, arbitrary size, but greater than a half acre, if they don't, I'm sorry, less than a half an acre, if they currently have a building permit out and they do intend on having a side storage area, it would have to be concrete or asphalt.
That's right.
Okay. I do think, if that said, I do think that we should maybe give a little bit of grace.
I agree.
March 1st.
March 1? Proposal for March 1?
Yep.
Seems like it would be feasible for widespread construction.
Okay. And that would be, the construction is completed by March 1.
Yeah.
So if they've had it in the works, they're just slow getting it done, give them a little time. And then the other alternative, the other thing I want to suggest is that instead of the last sentence, we would use prefatory language before the inserted language. That on lots of more than 1/2 acre on which the principal construction was completed before March 1 of 2024, comma, an alternate hard surface is available.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot more sense.
Okay. Everybody good with that?
Yep.
Works for me.
Sorry, guys, is it clear that, so if you rebuilt the house, let's say someone did a tear down after, I just wonder, is that already addressed in the language that this is
Only new
just a
construction.
one-time deal? So, 10 years from now, if you decided to build a new principal structure, would,
Well, my guess is that's the way that'd be interpreted, but I don't think it's defined as what is a principal structure or principal construction. What does that mean? But I do think that's probably the intention, is that it only applies to those folks who've got houses that exist already. Is there a better way to use that word other than principal construction? I don't know where that came from. Principal structure, I guess is the word it says.
Yeah, principal structure is kind of a term we use a lot here. It is the residence itself. It's the primary structure on the residence, which is, in this case, the home.
And I would assume if they tore it down and built a new one, you'd consider that a new principal structure.
That is correct.
So I think that would be the way that's interpreted, be my guess.
Yep, fair enough. Thank you for clarifying.
Any other discussion? So let me read proposed language to make sure you've got it for the record.
And I do believe, Mr. Chairman, you can make the motion, since
Well,
you've
then I'll
kind
go ahead and do that. I'd like to make a motion. I would like to recommend approval of the proposed changes to Article 6, Section 3, Item E2 for a text amendment to the City Council as proposed but modified such that an insertion of the following language would be before that language appearing in red, with the language to be read as on lots of more than 1/2 acre on which the principal structure was completed before March 1, 2024, comma, and then the language would remain as proposed. Then with the deletion of the last sentence that's now in blue.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Call for a vote?
Manson,
Yes.
Templin,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Milburn,
Yes.
Maddock,
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, and I must excuse myself, I'm sorry, I've got to run. I turn it over to my capable
All right,
vice.
Vice, let's see what's going on here.
Thanks, guys.
Did you get your? All right. Since agenda item, we're moving on to, we have no old business. We'll move on to new business, and item A has been tabled. So Brad, if you would brief us on the item B.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Patrick, do we need to actually have a motion to table? We did have an application. Notices were sent to residents. Notices were also sent to residents saying the item will not appear on the agenda tonight, but we do have an open application.
Yeah, we should do a motion to table it.
Would you guys like to make a motion?
I would make a motion that we table.
Do we have to?
We don't have a quorum.
Yeah, well, actually, as I understand it, we can open the meeting with the quorum. Even though we don't have 4 members voting, the meeting is still open, so you 3 can still proceed.
Go ahead and.
Make a motion to table it?
Yeah, go for it, yeah.
all
Okay.
right.
Yeah. I make the motion. If we can.
Yes, you can.
Okay, I second the motion to table, item 7A.
Do we have to have a roll call?
Yeah.
Okay.
You do,
Lane,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Maddock.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Should we go get the guys?
Yeah, they can come back.
Hey, can we get wrapped real fast?
Oh, yeah.
If we were actually voting on like a preliminary plat or something like that,
That wouldn't
it
fly.
wouldn't work, would it? 'Cause we would-
No, you can vote. You need a quorum to open the meeting. And now, as long as you have the quorum to open the meeting, and even though, say you only had 4 people in the audience, somebody drops out, there's 3 of you, you still,
Okay.
as long as you have a majority of the voting members,
Okay.
then you're good.
All right.
Yeah, also abstentions don't count against the quorum. So even if you had 4 people that had to abstain, it doesn't count against the quorum, so you're good.
We were trying to figure out if 3 could.
Good.
Oh, yeah.
We were a little confused. Thank you, Patrick. All
Yep.
right. Brett, we'll move on to item new business B.
All right. Uh, Thank you, Madam Chairman. All right, so what we have is another city code issue that, and I don't know if this is just a sign that DeSoto's getting a little more sophisticated and things are coming up more. It's just that we're finding these little tweaks and twists in the code that are just things we have to address. And this is another one of them that's come up is we do have the allowance for playhouses in our codes for setbacks. And the playhouses have a little special allotment or language that says they can be set back 10 feet or greater. And in the RO district, provided it's not in the front or side yard. So however, we got a situation where a person built a playhouse in their side, quote unquote, appears to be the side yard, but because they're on a corner, they have two fronts. And we talked about that 6-8 months ago, defining a front yard and a side yard so we could determine what the rear yard setbacks would be. And that's what the language is you have before you, or the illustration that you have before you as well. So the issue is this playhouse technically, depending on how you want to look at it, could be in violation of this. However, if it were not on a corner lot, it would be perfectly fine. So the staff felt that really we ought to clear that up if possible. And that would require a text amendment to the code that allows on a corner lot. And it's always seems to be the RO subdivision. A lot of these things come up because the setbacks are so big and people they just think, well, I got plenty of room here. Why can't I do this? And it comes up with accessory structures, in this case, a playhouse. And once again, if this playhouse were built in the RO subdivision on the exact same size lot, but it wasn't on a corner, we wouldn't have any discussion or any concerns about it. So with that, I mean, this has really taken up a little bit more time, staff time, than we ever thought it would. But Patrick did put together some suggested language that's revised for section B. And I was wondering, Patrick, if you could kind of run through the planning commission with your thinking on how to best address this.
Yes, and just to be, transparent, that we have a playhouse that I would say, I think no question it is out of compliance because being on a corner lot, that what looks to be the side yard counts as a front yard. So unlike other lots, they have to, even though they're putting the playhouse in the side yard, they have to comply with front yard setback. So what the proposed text is sort of, I guess, the philosophy behind it would be, corner lots, when they have an established side yard that, that people would view as that's the side of the house, is it really fair to limit them to only have a playhouse in the rear yard? And so this is simply saying that, if you're on a corner lot and there's established side yard, then you can put the playhouse in the side yard, and you need only comply with the setback for side and rear yards, not the front yard. So it's sort of cutting them a break on having two front yards.
So that's kind of our conundrum with this one is we had the option of, enforcing this and telling the resident, hey, you got to tear out your playhouse, even though it's a structure that is not permitted, non-regulated. You don't issue a building permit for it. It's not a shed, it's not a work facility, which we wouldn't allow. And we do have that note in the code that says a playhouse can be within the setback up to 10 feet. So just because it's on the corner lot is the issue here. So once again, this will go to council for a recommendation, as a recommendation, and they can obviously decide whether to direct city staff to pursue the policy that's in place now, or we just felt like this is probably one of those things we ought to
So,
address and,
so Brad, is it, just so I'm clear on this thing, I've read this thing several times. In the RO, the side yard setback's 25 feet, so if this hypothetical person would have put it on the other side, they could have been within 10 feet?
yes. Yeah, a playhouse, only a
Playhouse, yeah.
playhouse.
Yeah.
And if it's less than 120 square feet, and this is 10 by 10, so it's 100 square feet.
So then, wherever this hypothetical person is, I think I know where it's at. Are they within the 10-foot setback?
No, they're not. They're about 15 feet from,
So they would be fine if it was on the other side.
yes.
So was
But because of the way our definition is, when you're on a corner lot, you have two fronts. You have two fronts, the front yard setback is 50 feet in RO.
Yep.
And so it would be completely out of compliance.
Was this in structure already in place before we defined all this front and side yard on corner lots?
No,
No.
it's been built in the last, well, it's been recently, it's brand new.
To Brad's point, I mean, it's not a permanent structure, I don't know how many people look up, setbacks.
Yeah.
Is not used for storage, I believe, should be highlighted yellow too, right? That's also revised language from what it is up above.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
prepared-
Yeah, I
Yeah,
actually like
okay.
that verbiage. I think it
Yeah, okay, I'm
helps
sorry, I didn't catch
define
that.
it.
That should have been highlighted as well.
Any other discussion?
And just for the planning commission's just general knowledge as part of, the discussion we had, even though we don't require a building permit for structures like this, the setback is still a city regulation that, if we get a complaint that, my neighbor has this, small building that's intruding into the setback, that is still something the city would regulate, even though it's not a structure that we would ever require a building permit. And so we kind of felt like that's probably part of the issue here, since there was no building permit to build this structure, presumably the property owner did not research setbacks, but with a complaint, we don't have any choice but to address it. So here we are.
So I guess this structure is not going to be grandfathered.
No, it would not be.
No, but it's in, if you were to, I think there was some confusion, Brett, with Justin's question.
Oh,
If you were to adopt this language, this
oh, I see what you mean, because it was built before the language was adopted, would it be,
No,
is that what you're
I
thinking?
That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm like, are you guys going to make them move this structure because
That's what I
it's,
was wondering.
I don't think so, because we're considering the fact that we're not gonna look at it like it's a front yard. In the case of being a playhouse, we'll treat it like side yard from a setback perspective.
well, I guess what Brad and everybody's bringing up is it's in the front yard.
Well, but
Yes,
there's two fronts in a corner lot, I think is what Brad said, so
Oh,
you.
yeah, I know. Oh, yeah, yeah. So there's two, so it's in the front yard.
Yeah,
it is
so-
in a considered front yard, and so, I
So
guess
it's out of
what,
compliance.
it's out of
If this thing is
compliance.
If this thing is passed, it's out of
You don't,
compliance.
you don't get to pick which ones, if there's two
No.
fronts, you don't get to pick which one.
Not with the thing we passed.
Well,
6
no,
months
with
ago.
what we changed is, we do have the narrow side of the lot is now the front. So if you look at that graphic, right,
Okay, yeah.
the street, that shows, that's the front on a corner lot. Now, you have two fronts, mind you, but the primary front, the one that, you know, your driveway, all that would be accessed off of, that's the primary front.
So in this case here, it would still be out of compliance then?
If this is
No,
adopted, it won't be out of compliance.
I mean, just to be technical about it, I suppose we could write tickets to this homeowner for every day prior to this going into effect, or yesterday we could have made the homeowner tear this structure down. But once this is passed, assuming it is passed, that structure would be in compliance. So no, they wouldn't be out of compliance. I mean, it's basically, this is regulating where you can put a playhouse. And so, yeah, my interpretation would be if this language was passed, we would have no further enforcement against this particular homeowner with this playhouse sitting where it is. But at the same time, we're not like lobbying you guys to accommodate. It's just this particular structure, my understanding is on footings, and it would be quite a task to tear this out. And to be honest, when I got involved in this, it just did seem to me that there was some wisdom behind, is that really fair to someone on a corner lot that, you know, they're essentially limited to their backyard for a playhouse, even though they have what everyone would view as being a side of the house or a established side yard. But
Okay, so I guess I'm sorry, I guess I'm really kind of missing the point here a little bit. But 6 months ago, so when we established that discussion that we had, the narrow portion of the lot is the front, and then that side yard on the corner, that would be a 10-foot setback, say, for example, or would that still be the front?
No, it's still a front yard setback. And that's, I mean, but we do have issues as far as addressing, where the driveway goes, where the house faces, all these things that are determined when you have new construction. Now, we can drive through Old DeSoto and see where these things are all flipped, and they're not. I mean, right across the street from City Hall, there's a house that's wide and its driveway's on the side. The address, the front door faces here. So that's why you have the language about the community development director gets to make a decision on some of these odd duck locations. But in this case, it didn't feel like that was strong enough to say, well, this yard, because it meets the criteria of what we established as sort of the primary front. The address, the driveway, the front door is all off that narrow side or a narrow portion of the street. And so it meets our definition of a lot on a corner. And so, and really, that was also part of trying to define what is a side and what is the rear. I mean, we didn't really contemplate, you know, this little provision for a playhouse, which is a very obscure part of our accessory structure code that probably none of us really knew existed until a month ago.
yeah, so are we all clear that this loophole, if you will, that we're crafting only applies to a playhouse that is not used for storage? That's it. It doesn't change anything else about the code or what's a front or side yard at all.
Does that answer questions, Justin, or not? You still-
Well,
I
and
guess I'm
maybe
sorry.
that graphic doesn't show
Yeah, I guess
that,
I'm-
as far as visually, the way it should be portrayed, but
Is
it still shows where there's two fronts on a corner lot.
where I was thinking that the playhouse was kind of depicted where the F in front was in red there. Is that about right?
No, it would be depicted on the, I guess, on this location. Yeah, it would be over on this side of the house. So the main primary front on this lot is right here.
Okay,
That's the way this house is set up.
got it.
Okay.
Okay.
So it meets our criteria for a corner lot.
But, I mean, I guess where I'm confused, and again, it's not the Playhouse stuff, it's going back 6 months now. Hate to keep bringing this up again, but on that one that you just pointed at, Brad, the front there would be, say this is the RO zoning, that'd be 50 feet. Now, the way I understand it, on the corner, the one where you're pointing where the Playhouse would be, that should be 50 feet too.
That is correct. So this graphic is a little misleading because that, that line should be, for those corner lots where I was pointing to, should show the same distance.
Yeah, so I guess that's what I was getting at, is if we, and the way, I guess I'm not understanding the way the wording is, but if we would pass this, then that house would not be in compliance.
Well, no, the house
I
itself
mean, not
is
the house, but the Playhouse.
the Playhouse.
Yeah,
No, if we pass this, the house will be, or the Playhouse will be in compliance because we're creating a little,
okay,
Creating a loophole.
yeah, okay, if you will, yes.
okay.
Loophole is usually not a favorable term, but
Looks like a nice playhouse.
And I guess I would just say that definitely you as policymakers, there definitely a fair argument can be made. Look, we don't, this is a side of the, a yard that faces the street. We don't want, the Playhouse. So I'm not saying you have to do this. It just, is there any fairness argument to be made that, when you're on a corner lot, should you be limited to having a Playhouse only in your backyard? But I guess I'm obviously a big part of this is to address this situation. So I'm not clear, and for some reason I can't see things on my camera. But Justin, are you saying that even if we pass this language, it's your view that this particular Playhouse would still be out of compliance, even with the new language?
Yes, yeah, I really agree to that. I mean, I see where it says established side yard, but in theory, the side yard adjacent to that street on the corner, that's 50 feet.
well, and I guess I actually kind of went down this road a while, because when you say established side yard, and then you still,
Side yard is
it's
not there,
still the
both
front yard.
fronts, right? That's what the.
So I don't know if we
confusing
should,
language
So the
is.
verbiage is.
if we need to,
Established side yard, the only established side yard is on the opposite side. That is still classified as front, rear, and side, right?
yeah, and I guess, but I think what Patrick was getting to is,
I
when you look at
understand
the
what he's
house, the
saying,
way
but-
it's set up, it's,
Right.
but rear.
there's two sides and a rear for a Playhouse. And maybe that's not clear enough, or we need to,
Yeah.
Patrick, can you recommend some verbiage that would clarify that?
now we're not gonna have this, we can bring this back on the 19th.
Okay.
And because we don't have time to do a public hearing, so if we do a public hearing, it'll be in January.
Yeah.
So we can bring this back and maybe polish that so it's a little,
So, what you're saying is the minority front is what we're talking about, right?
Right. So if you look at a house, you got the front, and then you got a side and a side, but this side is whatever. This side here is 25, and this side's 50.
Yeah.
Okay, can I just, and I agree, we'll just come back with, but Brad, did you provide the planning commission with the definition of side yard that I had provided to you?
I just gave them the definitions that are in the current city code.
Yeah, the current definition is side yard is a yard extending from the front yard or front property line where no front yard is required to the rear yard. So I just wanted to make sure, Justin, that was in your analysis there.
Yeah, I guess we can just forget the term for a second. It's 50 feet, 25, and 50. And the Playhouse is in the 50 feet.
Well, it is, but that's why the nuance of an established side yard is when you visually look at it, it appears to be a side yard, the way it,
Right.
but by definition, you're right, it's still a front yard.
Right, but this revised language, we're saying for purposes of a playhouse,
For a playhouse only, correct.
we're gonna allow you to, all you have to do if you comply with the rear or side yard setback, and I guess that's where the hangup is it's circular in that, what you're saying, Justin, as well. I mean, don't you agree though, if it says just comply with the rear or the side yard, then that's 10 feet.
Okay, I see what you're
Yeah.
saying now. So
Yeah,
you're
that would-
saying it's the side yard of that zoning is 25.
Mhm.
Okay. I guess I just have in my head, it's not 25, it's 50.
Who's on first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'm.
So Brad, are you clear on what?
Yeah,
we need?
I guess we just need to make that a little easier to understand, because in 10 years, 15 years, this will come up with somebody else. and
You got
None of us will.
2 + 1 + 1. You get 4 total. That's it, right? So what you're saying is, you gotta have a front and a back and 2 sides. And if you have 2 fronts, you gotta pick one. That's gonna be.
But only for a
applicable.
playhouse.
Only for a playhouse, right?
Everybody else,
Right.
you're still, if you want to put up an
Right.
accessory
Yeah.
structure or a
Agreed.
garage or
Yeah.
something.
No storage, everything else, yeah.
Yeah, so we just gotta say it's a playhouse.
Which is why I kind of assumed that you just pick which one, but you're saying it's the longer of the two.
It's-
Would be the side yard. The longer, the narrow one is the front.
And so, I mean, it's like, okay, I have to un-engineer my brain to,
The deeper one, and versus the wider one is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair.
All right, well,
So we're just gonna bring this back next.
we'll bring it back, okay?
Yeah. We're all gonna forget by January, anyways.
oh yeah.
Now, we got, 19th of December, remember?
Yeah,
We'll be back.
all right, thank you for walking us through that mud hole.
Okay.
So, now all we have to do is talk about.
audience, they said enough.
Yeah.
That was tough. Our calendar, December the 7th is city council meeting. Our next meeting is December the 19th, where we get to discuss the mud hole. And December the 21st will be another city council meeting. So, any discussion on anything? Anybody have any thoughts? Or do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
See you later, Patrick.
Thank you, guys.
though.
Well, yeah,
I think
This
Finally
conference
dawned
is
on me.
no longer being recorded.
Well, yeah, somebody's complaining because they got denied for an accessory building, so they're kind of upset. Somebody built a playhouse and it's like,
That is a very nice playhouse.
It is, I got no problem with it.
It's not really.
no, if you drive and